Welcome to the Two Angels Christmas Story. But first, segments from the audiobook version of The Very Fine Light. I hope Advent brings you a more enriching Christmas time. Many of you have been asking for the paperback release of my book, The Very Fine Light, and now it's available on Amazon. Once it's ordered, they'll ship it directly to you. And of course, the audio version is there, as well as on Audible and Apple. And for those of you who aren't familiar with this book, it's a contemporary novel about a village on the verge of bankruptcy and Randy, a freewheeling village employee who's always in trouble for speaking his mind. But first, segments from the audiobook version of The Very Fine Light. Chapter 19. Randy would occasionally downshift the powerful four-wheel drive vehicle to keep it moving as the storm continued to rage. "I can't see anything," Mikey said as he moved his head from the front window and then looking out the side window. "Just be careful," Julie said abruptly. Randy looked at her. She frowned at him. Then he turned to face forward. Julie screamed, "Look out!" Dead ahead sat the stalled ambulance on the narrow bridge. Randy jerked the steering wheel, causing the pickup to spin. Though the forward momentum of the truck made it travel closer to the ambulance, Randy punched the gas while the truck was still spinning. The four wheels responded to their master's touch and broke the spin, but now the truck headed towards an old oak tree. Wanting to avoid a head-on collision, Randy pressed down hard on the clutch pedal while turning the steering wheel to the left. An immediate loss of power to the wheels, combined with the weight of the truck as it traveled across a drift of crusty snow, bogged it down. The pickup came to a stop just a hair's breadth before the oak tree. All Randy could see was his ever-present religious medallion staring at him from the dashboard. Chef Joe's mom, the ambulance driver, rushed over to Randy's door. "Please help us. We've got a child with appendicitis in the ambulance, and we're stuck, and the engine won't start." "Okay, I'll give you a tow," Randy shouted and carefully backed up to the stranded ambulance. Mikey forced open the passenger door, and Randy tossed Mikey a flashlight that had an extruded, cone-shaped red plastic tip. "Here, turn this on and go watch for cars in the rear. Be ready to jump on the back of the ambulance's bumper when we move, 'cause once we get going, I won't stop." He then turned to the EMT. "Ma'am, get in your ambulance and put it in neutral. When I'm ready to pull, I'll blink my lights 3 times. Then just follow my lead." The ambulance driver nodded. Mikey squinted in an effort to spot any cars coming through the blizzard. Randy looked at Julie. "I'm afraid you're going to have to stand on my pickup truck's running board with the door open and watch as the chain gets taut. Then yell out so the ambulance driver and I can hear." Julie nodded, and everyone went to their positions. Randy pulled out a long, heavy chain from the box in the pickup bed. He then quickly attached one end to his trailer hitch and the other end to the ambulance's tow hook underneath the front bumper. Mikey had a hard time running through the drifting snow towards the back of the ambulance. What if another car comes too fast and hits the ambulance? The thought frightened him. Randy hopped into his truck and blinked his lights 3 times, then rode the clutch, inching his pickup truck forward. "Okay, it's okay," Julie shouted as soon as the chain between the two vehicles was taut. Randy now gave his truck full power. The tires on his pickup truck dug in, but the ambulance would not budge. He tried again, but no results. Fortunately, on the 3rd attempt, the ambulance finally inched forward. Randy did not stop. The ambulance moved slowly off the bridge. Mikey jumped onto the rear bumper of the ambulance and held on. Randy's truck strained under the load, but successfully pulled the ambulance to the modest county hospital located at the village's edge. The emergency room team ran out and opened the ambulance doors. Julie, happy at their success, punched Randy in the arm and ran back to the ambulance as the ER team rushed the ill child onto a gurney and through the ER's large swinging doors. And now, on to part 2 of this podcast. Merry Christmas, and may God bless you and those near and dear to you. Once upon a Christmas time, not so long ago, A middle-aged fellow had a promise to keep and got into a relatively new car to deliver gifts to an old friend now living alone. Christmas Day would come in less than a week, and the weather had turned cold. Like most years, during this last week before the Nativity, the pace had quickened, and this visit, though necessary, came at a bad time for the driver. But arrangements had been made, a date and time set. Mid-afternoon arrived, and off the car went. These friends unfortunately lived on opposite ends of the city. The drive would be just under an hour, traffic permitting, and the best route would be the freeway. At a traffic light before the highway, the car stopped near a homeless woman who was panhandling. During church the week before, the driver had taken several shopping bags of items that were intended to be handed out to homeless people, called bags of joy. These bags included a few disposable items, a few bottles of water, and snacks. The woman took the bag and nodded appreciatively. After an uneventful drive, the old friends got together and enjoyed their holiday get-together, and the conversation included memories of work-related times, family updates, seasoned with a bit of melancholy as they reflected on the passage of time. Though just 90 minutes were shared, it was a great time. Driving away and checking the cell phone map, it was clear that the driver would have plenty of time to get back home and continue on with necessary duties left undone because of this midweek visit. Just before the entrance ramp, the driver spotted a landmark fast food diner noted for its unique milkshakes. Though in the depths of the Nativity Fast, the driver felt the sweet liquid would not break the fast, as lunchtime had been light and, well, it was rare to be in these parts of the city. So the driver stopped and enjoyed the shake in the car, and then headed onto the highway. Vehicles on the 5 lanes of southbound traffic into the city were heavy and moving faster than the speed limit, so the driver moved into the middle of the 5 lanes. Suddenly, there was a long piece of twisted guardrail that came bouncing across the traffic lanes just ahead of the car. This rail of ribbed steel was very long, in the driver's estimation about 12 feet, and it landed all across the lane in front of the driver. With trucks on both sides, hitting the object was the only option available. The terrible sound as it broke the plastic panel underneath the front bumper was followed by a banging as the rail hit the right front tire, which was immediately shredded. Oddly, moving over to the shoulder was relatively easy, though the scraping of the metal wheel and plastic parts was disorienting. Nevertheless, the car was safe on the wide right-hand shoulder of the highway. Unfortunately, the next exit was not in sight, and driving on the wheel to get to it was not an option. The driver decided to change the tire. However, the car jack was difficult to use because the car was so low to the ground now that the rubber had been shredded off the wheel. 25 minutes after a call to 911, in hopes of an emergency response vehicle or tow truck to come help, the sound of cars whizzing by at 70+ miles per hour in the cold, with the end of the light of day beginning to wane, became too much. Fortunately, a tall, affable state trooper pulled over, and after checking out the situation, rolled up his sleeves and helped the driver change the tire. So grateful was the driver that upon noticing the so-called donut spare tire was almost flat, he decided not to bother the officer of the law any further, especially as the driver noted that a large truck came uncomfortably close to the policeman as he entered his police car. And though it was only 45 minutes away to get to home via the highway, the donut spare tire, plus the 2 plastic pieces dragging on the ground, required using surface streets to get home. Plus, using the surface streets, though a much longer trip, would allow for finding a gas station for getting some air into the very soft spare tire. Well, just off the highway was a gas station with a faded sign, and it had a weathered and worn-out-looking air pump. The driver spotted a homeless man standing near the pump. An instinct suggested pausing. However, the driver coasted to a stop and made eye contact with his fellow. To the driver's surprise, the fellow, obviously sizing up the broken mess of a vehicle and frazzed driver, took pity on the driver and said to him, "This air pump's broken. There's a new gas station just down the way. Maybe their air pump is working." "Thanks," the driver said, a bit relieved that he had not been hit up for cash, but also disappointed at the need to continue driving with the soft spare donut tire. Though preoccupied and noting the homeless man turned away and did not ask for anything else, the driver hesitated, thinking, "I wish I had more bags of joy for this fella." He stopped, got out of the car, and said, "God bless you," and handed the fella several dollars. "Merry Christmas to you too," the fella replied. Driving off to the next station, whose air pump worked, but the hose had been cut in two, the drive continued down the city streets on the soft spare tire with the two pieces of plastic making a terrible scraping sound along the road. Not only was still a third air pump not working, but the additional 5 other ones that the driver stopped at all the way home. That 45-minute to 1-hour drive took 2.5 hours to complete, but the driver made it home. A sleepless night ensued. How much damage besides the tire and the broken underbody panel could there be? Did the car need an entirely new wheel as well as a new tire? Would it require purchasing a second radial tire? Were other critical parts torn up and have to be replaced? Where should one go to have it inspected? The dealer would take up most of the next day and no doubt be very expensive. Suddenly an idea came. Try the little one-person used tire shop tucked behind the old restaurant down the way, where the driver had stopped one time, and then maybe next go to the repair garage the driver had used for many years, but had recently been sold. Perhaps the new mechanic would put the car on the lift and inspect it without taking all day. And then, well, the driver would know exactly how much damage had actually occurred and how soon and how expensive it would be before getting the car roadworthy once again. That morning, driving slowly on the even softer donut, the driver came to the first stop. The tire shop yielded a pleasant surprise. The owner, a young, hard-working fella, checked all the tires and said, "The wheel's okay, you just need one new tire," which he quickly repaired as the driver tentatively petted the junkyard dog. While paying, the driver asked, "Thanks for getting me in and out so soon. By the way, what's your name?" "Angel." "Thank you, Angel, for getting me in and out so soon." "Feliz Navidad," was Angel's reply. Next stop was to meet with the new owner of the Shade Tree Repair Shop, also a young man who nodded as the car pulled up with the 4 good tires, but the 2 pieces of plastic still dragging underneath. The mechanic said, "Keys, please." Before the driver knew it, the mechanic got the vehicle onto a car lift and then quickly raised it up almost to the ceiling. He checked thoroughly all the parts on the car. "Everything looks good. All that's broken is that plastic cowling underneath the bumper. We've got a replacement. If you'd like, we could make the repair." The driver was so relieved, he did not even ask the price, just nodded and said, "Get her done, please." By the end of the morning, the repair had been made, the price reasonable. As the mechanic handed the driver his receipt, the driver said gratefully, "I'll be back whenever I need my cars repaired. By the way, what's your name?" The mechanic replied, "Angel." The driver was shocked to think 2 angels had gotten the car up and running. Merry Christmas from Nikos Steves, and thank you for listening. My book can be found using the title, The Very Fine Light, on Amazon.com.
Please feel free to contact me at nikossteves@gmail.com. That's Nikos Steves, Steves, @gmail.com. If you like this episode and for more, share them with friends at constantprocession.com. Well, this is Nikos Steves. Thank you. See you next time.